So, how Maidan has changed the relationship between the state and the civil society?
Well, I mean, the civil society has taken a wider role than it used to have before, primarily as a reaction to the temporary collapse of the state authorities. Civil society felt in a way that they had to fill in the gap and perform functions that were generally part of the state functions, but that the state could not provide anymore, like security, for example, or medical care. We've seen a lot of that.
Do you see any risk in this role of the civil society?
Well, actually, yes. I mean, it is a potential source of concern. I mean, on one side, it is of course very important that civil society stays involved, engaged in the security sector, primarily to guarantee a degree of democratic oversight. But then, I mean, there are functions like police functions that need to be performed by the state, because I mean, the state theoretically should provide a guarantee of impartiality and protection of all citizens in the process.
In your presentation, you also mentioned the role of oligarchs. What was their actual role according to you?
Well, I mean, the oligarchs also filled in a gap at a point when the state authorities were no longer able to control the whole territory. I have the feeling that, I mean, at a certain point there was, I mean, you could talk about the emergence of some city-states and the authorities in Kiev, which could not control the whole territory. In a way, tried to strike alliances with the people who did control the territory at a regional level, and then outsourced somehow the authorities or security functions also to some of the oligarchs. We've seen it with Kolomoisky, we've seen it with Taruta.
Kolomoisky, let's talk about Kolomoisky, because he has acquired some power, additional power, because of this outsourcing of security reasons. Is it a matter of concern also?
Well, I mean, it's a matter of concern to have individuals or oligarchic interests acquiring authority more than the legitimate institutions in general terms.
You also, in your presentation, mentioned the kind of social demand for decentralization. Could you just develop a little bit, from what you have seen on the ground?
Well, what I've seen is, I mean, as many people have mentioned it here, as many people have mentioned and presented it throughout the protest. I mean, Maidan was a movement for dignity, a quest for dignity, for people to have a normal life, to be able to have business without being subject to corruption schemes, without being exposed to the brutality of the police and that sort of things. And of course, I mean, the authority, the regional authorities played an important role in this from that point of view. I mean, there has been, and historically in Ukraine, there has been a constant demand to somehow, well, apportion powers also at